To the CMA SEMA Weekly Webinar Series. I'm Jackie Lewis, VP of Content here at the CMA and SEMA, and I will be your host for today. And today we are here to talk all about out of stocks. The CPG and retail industry loses billions of dollars a year to out of stock inventory issues. And with a recession looming, it's more important than ever to have your in stock situations correct. So today we're going to hear a case study from Mars Petcare, Seek, Crisp, and Snowflake on how they worked together to reduce out of stock instances, transform their inventory process, and achieve massive ROI. So today from Mars, we are joined by Peter McCarty, Supply Chain Business Systems Manager since 2019. And prior to that, he worked in finance and HR for Dow Chemical and P&G. He is joined with us by Eric Mitchell, who is founder and CEO of Seek, a leading retail and CPG-focused analytics consultancy. Tony Miller also joins us today, Director of Sales Engineering at Crisp, who is a CPG subject matter expert leading demos and trainings for the company. And then finally, Freddie Gard, Head of Industry Go-to-Market for Consumer Goods for the Americas as part of Snowflake's retail industry team. So 4 fantastic industry experts. We are thrilled to be joining us today to walk through this case study. I know this is only a short 30-minute webinar, but we are going to try and save some time for questions at the end. So please feel free, if you have a question that comes up throughout the presentation, please enter that in the chat box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen at any time. And for any that we don't get to, the guys on the call will make sure to follow up with you afterwards. And then finally, if you missed something as well, we plan to be posting the slides used today in the presentation in the CMA and SEMA resource library, either tomorrow or Monday, and we will shoot you all a note to let members know when they're posted there. So welcome again, guys. Great to have you here, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Eric.
Perfect. Thank you, Jackie. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining. I personally am really excited for the webinar today as we're going to discuss how we've brought together a deeper technology and data partnerships to provide a new and radically different way to solve some of your highest value but most challenging problems that your teams face today. Most importantly, faster than ever before. So during the session today, we're going to talk about a couple things. We'll talk about how putting together an efficient data and analytics supply chain can help you enhance the way that you serve your actual product supply chain, do more proactive, more granular, and more prescriptive analytics on top of your most important data assets, and most importantly, without taking weeks or months to do so. So we're going to talk about how Crisp, Snowflake, and Seek are reimagining the data and analytics supply chain, from the curation or manufacturing of data to the sharing or logistics of the data, and then to that last mile of analytics, actually producing insights on top of your data for your customers, and most importantly, for your consumers. So all of this is under the assumption that we're able to do this in a much faster way than we have before by leveraging the technologies and the data providers that we have here on the call. So before diving into the actual solution, let's chat about the specific problem that we're trying to solve and that we're partnering with Mars Petcare on. So as Jackie mentioned, retailers and CPG companies lose billions of dollars a year in out of stocks for a number of different reasons. And especially in particular in channels like the dollar channel, it's really difficult to manage and optimize this at the store and item level. Some of these retailers or channels have tens of thousands of stores, which makes it really difficult, both from a data perspective and from an action perspective. There's 3 main challenges with solving these particular out of stocks. The first one, as I mentioned, is these data sets can be massive and they need streamlined. So when you think about these data assets, if you take a portfolio that has tens or in some cases hundreds of items, and you multiply that by 10,000, 15,000 store locations, that data asset becomes really, really unwieldy, really fast. And so if you think about the legacy way that we would approach this particular problem, those data sets are simply too big. They're too big for a number of different reasons. Number one is they're too big to transfer in the legacy manner. So think about doing things like SFTP drops. Managing that type of workload is really difficult, really challenging. And once you get to that particular data landed in your environment and synced with the original source, now we have legacy tools that sit on top of that that can't handle the volumes of data that we're working with here. So in a lot of cases, you're talking about billions of rows of data, and obviously tools like Excel can handle 1 million rows at a time. So when you think about, solving out of stocks, Excel or legacy tools might allow you to solve out of stocks for, let's say, 5 items at a handful of stores, not the, hundreds of items across thousands of stores that everyone really needs to solve. And finally, the third piece is once you have that data in your environment, even in a streamlined manner, having the right people to build the right applications on top of that can be challenging as well. So hiring the right talent, retaining that talent, and making sure that they understand the full use case that they're trying to execute against can be challenging as well. And so as we think about, why are we tackling this particular problem? I think it's because although this problem can be challenging, the ROI can be transformative for an organization, especially the size of a Mars Petcare. And so as we think about the 3 major benefits that somebody could get or an organization could get from doing this type of analysis, let's start with the obvious one, right? Which is millions in increased revenue. So if you think about ensuring your items are on the shelf and in stock, not only is that millions of revenue for you as a CPG company, but it's millions in revenue for the retailer as well. And most importantly, that partnership between the CPG company and the retailer becomes stronger if you solve this particular problem. The second piece of this is we all know in the industry, out of stocks in a lot of cases can lead to fines, right? So not only do you solve the out of stocks on the shelf and increase revenue, but you also reduce fines at the same time. So, the way that we like to think about it is if you solve one particular out of stock, you get benefits on both sides of the equation. And then finally, increased customer, so in this case, the retailer or consumer satisfaction as well. Many of us have been in a situation where you walk into a store and your favorite item is not on the shelf and you're forced to make a decision. Do I go somewhere else to buy that same item or do I switch to a competitor brand, right? And so in this case, both of those solutions are not ideal either for the retailer or the CPG company. So by solving out of stocks and making sure your items are on the shelf, you can increase customer or consumer satisfaction, which then again benefits both the retailer and the CPG. So when we think about solving this particular problem, somebody might say, my main question is simply, where do I first get the data? And so what we want to talk about here is how we're leveraging Crisp to get to that data and provide that data that allows Mars Petcare to solve this particular problem. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to Tony Miller from Crisp to chat through what Crisp is doing and how they're leveraging their technology to serve this use case.
All right, thanks, Eric. So this is what we call our Crisp Octopus. We sit in between the data that's stored within these retail and distributor portals and the Snowflakes, your data analytics, your BI tools you want to get this data into. So we really streamline, automate that collection, cleansing, and delivery of all that retailer and distributor data for these CPGs. We connect to the CPG's most valuable data sets, eliminate manual work, allow organizations to really focus on the analysis rather than the collection of the data. Let your analysts analyze rather than be data aggregators and data collectors. We pull all of the data at the highest level of granularity available from these platforms. In most cases, this is going to be store, item, day level, inventory, and sales data. These connections look different for each portal that we connect to. Sometimes it's done through an API, other times it's done with an automated headless browser, kind of recreating these reports. And in this case we're talking about today, we use a customer's access token to make direct calls with an unexposed API. For a connection like this one we're talking about today, it's downloading over 2,000 tasks and 4 million rows of data daily. This would take an analyst almost 20 to 30 hours to try and replicate on their own, and that's just for one day's worth of data. And unlike when a person is running these reports, we're going to automatically retry and rerun it if something in the report fails. Beyond doing this of rerunning the reports, we also re-download and look back for restatements. So if something happens in the historical data, we will automatically rerun and restate that data. After all this data is ingested, we validate it, we normalize it, we harmonize it, so it's ready to go both in our lightweight dashboards that we offer on platform or to connect to your Snowflake instance so it's ready to go for additional analytics.
Perfect. Thanks, Tony. And so as you see, Crisp makes it significantly easier to get to the data that you need to solve these particular use cases. Again, when you think about day item store level data, this is massive, a massive amount of data. And so to be able to get that in an automated fashion, as Tony mentioned, can save you tens and hundreds of hours a year of analysts' time just going to pull data. So with that said, now that we have the data itself, I guess the next question is, why and what do we put it into, right? So that's where we're gonna ask Freddie Gard to chat through, how Snowflake fits into this particular solution and what Snowflake enables for customers as well.
Thank you, Eric. So like Eric and Pete led us through the industry challenge in terms of how do you scale large analytics capability in an organization so it becomes not a one-off analysis, but a ongoing capability. One of the largest challenges that is existing in most CPG organizations is the silos of data that exist. And bringing in the right data from providers like Crisp helps a lot, but it still needs to be curated in the right manner, stored in the right manner, and then more importantly, mobilized for the end data consumers in the right manner. And that's where we come in as Snowflake. And a lot of you might have heard of us. We're known as the data cloud company. One question I always get is, what is a data cloud? So I'll spend a couple of minutes telling you what a data cloud is, especially from a business perspective. Why does it matter and what does it enable? So the data cloud basically has two components. One is our platform. So we have a data platform that is able to work with all data types. So that's structured, unstructured, semi-structured data sets. And it's extremely important because you've got more and more data coming at you and large quantities of data. So you want a platform that's not only ready for today, but can be scaled for tomorrow's needs. The data also, our data platform also supports a variety of workloads. So everything from data engineering to data science. What that means is it drives simplicity of platform and technology. So you don't need that many technology resources. And it's a managed platform. And what that enables is you don't have to worry about performance. So it can scale up and down based on your needs, especially if you have seasonal businesses and you have seasonal needs, you can scale it up and down in a very efficient manner. And then finally, it sits on all three major public clouds. Now, why is that important from a business perspective? Like Eric mentioned, you're constantly having to tap into different data sources. The fact that we can work across data cloud providers and regions means you can share data seamlessly without having to create more copies of the data. And that means you're governing the data in the right manner, you're removing latency from your data sets, and you can really share it real time. So when Crisp makes a data set available, it's instantly available in your Snowflake instance for you to be able to consume in the manner you want. So that's the platform part of it. And the second part of it is the content. And the content comes to life in terms of we curate content specifically for industry use cases. So I'm part of the retail and consumer goods vertical, and we work with data service providers like Crisp and with our solution providers like Seek to activate these data sets. So we've got over 1,700 data sets in the marketplace today. So for example, if Eric wanted to bring together the right data sets and augment his models and data science capabilities, he could tap into marketplace data sources relatively easily. And those data sources are everything from commodity data to macroeconomic factors data, supply chain risk data, et cetera. And then on the solution side, we've got services like Seek that are developing really pointed solutions for these large-scale challenges that have existed for a long time. So in this case, we're talking about on-shelf availability, but the same concept can be applied to multiple different use cases that Eric will talk about in a bit. But what it does is it really mobilizes data and gives the insights for actions to the end data consumers. And now we've got the ability to develop native apps on our platform. And what that does is it provides performance and scale for providers like Seek to really develop their applications on top of the data without having to move the data again. So that really opens up another new level of possibilities in terms of the speed to insights that we're able to generate through this partnership.
Perfect. Thanks, Freddie. And so as we think about putting data within Snowflake from a business perspective, as a former user of Snowflake, partner of Snowflake, et cetera, what does this mean from a business perspective, right? If I'm a CPG company and I have all of these data sets, as Freddie mentioned, what does this actually do for me? How does it transform the way that I work? And as we think about that, one visual or one concept that we like to talk about is this concept of the retail data hub. And so one key piece that Freddie mentioned that I want to make sure is super clear is that to get access to this data in Snowflake no longer requires moving it. So you no longer have to transfer that data. So as Freddie mentioned, if Crisp collects all this data and does what Snowflake calls a data share over to Mars Petcare, within Mars Petcare Snowflake environment, they can see that data and it's pointed at the source. So it's not a copy that Mars Petcare moved into their environment and then has to sync. Their Snowflake environment is pointed directly at the source without having to move it, which reduces the weeks or months that it would take to set up that pipeline and ensures that you're looking at the latest and greatest data. So you take today's transactional ecosystem, right, with all these siloed portals, internal data sets, Excel sheets, et cetera, and you can transform that into this Snowflake retail data hub where you get all these different data sources. So as Freddie mentioned, you think about point of sale data, you think about demographic data, you think about loyalty data, all of those data sets can be brought into the Snowflake retail data hub. And then your team can access all of this at the same time in the same environment, which is critical to success. So as Freddie mentioned, what's the next frontier of this? So once you have the data, you've built this data hub, how does this continue to help your business analysts? And the way that we like to think about it is, the next gen solution or the next frontier of cloud analytics is delivering turnkey applications at scale. So, Freddie mentioned obviously building pointed solutions. One of the things we're doing here at Seek is actually creating software products that are pointed solutions on top of these industry use cases. So think about the out-of-stock solution and think about a world where you're able to go from data curation, the Crisp side of the equation, and the data management side of it, to the data sharing aspect, which is the Snowflake side of it. And then you're able to layer on what we call turnkey analytics insights on top of that data. So in the old world, to go pull this data, store it in your own internal database, and then build some sort of application on top of it that would solve the millions in out of stocks that we're talking about would almost be unachievable. By the time you built that platform, your platform is outdated and isn't solving the problem in the right way anymore. What we are doing here through bringing together these three solutions for Mars Petcare is getting them immediate access to the right data, shared into the right platform in Snowflake, and then delivering an application directly on top of it that allows Mars to immediately interact with this type of data and get the insights that they were hoping to get from it. Those insights will generate things like what stores are and items are going to run out of stock and when, so I can prescriptively send orders to stores to solve those out of stocks before they're happening. How do we look at things like shelf capacity, et cetera? And so as you think about turning millions of rows of data into millions in revenue and savings in just a few clicks, obviously going back to the benefits that we talked about earlier, number one, the first benefit of this is returning millions in increased store sales and reduced fines, right? The second piece here is, again, you solve this, you increase your customer and shopper satisfaction at the shelf, which is probably the most important piece of this whole puzzle and creates loyalty with your brands moving forward. And then finally, as we mentioned earlier, being able to scale this across retailers. As you think about the legacy process of building this, like I've mentioned, through FTPs and internal databases, et cetera, it's not scalable at all. When you bring together these three solutions of Crisp, Snowflake, and Seek, what we're able to do is actually deliver you a scalable solution that you could immediately turn on for your other retailers as well. So let's say, we deliver it for the dollar channel and the team sees massive success with that. What we're able to do is immediately replicate that to other retailers and other channels within the retail industry. What's really exciting about this is obviously we're talking about one particular use case here, which is solving out of stocks in a world where there's tons of other use cases that we could go solve with this particular approach. And so as I mentioned, you think about this next frontier of analytics, especially within retail and CPG, and you think about these solutions being broader than just solving out of stocks, right? And so one thing that I want to call out is obviously on top of, let's say, the Snowflake data cloud that has the most important data assets like CRISP in it. What we are working on is building out solutions across various different areas of your particular business and of a CPG's business, right? So if you think about building out loyalty solutions that help you better digitally target consumers through some of your most popular loyalty apps, that's another type of solution that we're building. You think about building applications that help you build smarter assortments, right? By combining different data assets, you leverage CRISP data in partnership with some of your planogram data, and you're able to build much smarter store layouts that hopefully will drive velocity increases. You think about, obviously, again, what we've talked about. So think about predicting out of stocks, solving inventory problems, OTIF, et cetera, leveraging data assets like CRISP on top of Snowflake. There's tons of different use cases within that world. And finally, one of the other areas that we're working on is an omni-channel analytics application world. So getting data from some of the providers like Numerator and the like that are really key data providers in this space and have data available on Snowflake's marketplace for us to build applications on top of. So this is, even though this particular use case was focused specifically on supply chain, the application of this particular process goes far beyond just supply chain use cases. So as a next step, one of the things that we are doing, which is really exciting, is we're going to talk about this particular use case and more use cases at the CMA conference coming up here in a few weeks at the end of February. So we would love to chat with anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about this use case or some of the other ones that we've talked about, that wants to chat with the Snowflake team or the CRISP team. There will be great opportunities for us to talk a little bit deeper in that particular venue. With that, I'm going to turn it over. First of all, thank you all again for joining. I'm going to turn it over to Jackie to see if we've had some questions come in.
Yes, great. And just a reminder to everyone in the audience, please feel free to submit a question now. We've got at least 5 or so minutes. And thank you guys for kind of diving into this case study. I'll say members come to us all the time and say the proliferation of data sets and the complexity of managing that data, it's just a continuous question and pain point. So it's great to see a specific solution like this, and some of the technology and software stuff that frankly is a little over my head, but thank you for simplifying it and just showing us kind of the steps and how each of the software plays together to help a common, frustration like an out of stock situation. So, okay, so let's go to our first question. So does this apply to a specific retailer, or can you use this application with any US retailer that you have the appropriate data for? I know you guys mentioned the dollar stores at the beginning of the presentation. So maybe we'll start with you, Eric, just to speak to what other retailers and retailer data this can work for.
Yeah, sure. So the exciting part about this is this use case exists and can be applied to any of the major retailers within the US. And one of the reasons for that is because of organizations like CRISP and Snowflake. So you think about the data sources that CRISP is able to capture. Those data sources provide us with all of the data needed to deploy what Freddie called is a native application on Snowflake to go solve these particular problems. So we focused, as Pete mentioned, we try to start small and grow from there. So it's easy to start with a specific retailer. We can turn on some turnkey applications and get those running. And then it's easy to expand beyond that to the other large retail partners that, that any of the CPG companies work with.
Good. Awesome. All right, let's go to our next one. How are retailers evolving requirements for out of stocks, and how do these insights allow CPGs to evolve alongside of them? Let's start with Freddie for this one.
Sure. So out of stocks is not necessarily a new challenge in the industry. It's been existing for a long time. It's just become more magnified during the COVID time. I think the one positive that's come out of the COVID disruption is both retailers and brands realize that they need to work closely together to solve this challenge, because each side has access to data and insights that really help complete the picture on shelf availability. So one thing we are seeing is that more and more retailers are open to collaborating with brands like Mars Petcare in terms of ones that are able to come to the table with the right insights. How can you work together and solve that challenge? Now, if you think about the recent times and what we are facing from a trends perspective, inflation's hitting all of us. So retailers are faced with labor shortages and labor rate increases. Brands are trying to minimize their cost to serve. So from that perspective, how do you drive efficient, intelligent use cases that are really going to be pointed and make a difference is where I think a lot of focus is going to be for the next 12, 24 months. And you will clearly see the brands that are winning will be the ones that are able to work collaboratively with the retailers.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I think one thing to add to that is, Freddie obviously mentioned the partnership between retailers and consumer goods companies. I think what we're also seeing, which is exciting here on this particular call, is partnership and collaboration between solution providers within this space. So, the ability to have a Crisp, a Snowflake, and a Seek partner to create one turnkey solution for an organization like Mars Petcare can be tremendously powerful, both in scale and then in time to execute. So if the three of us, let's say, create this solution, it makes it way easier for Pete's teams to leverage that solution and drive the ROI from it.
Yeah, great. Awesome. All right, so we got time for one more. We'll run over by a minute. So how long does it take to typically to generate ROI from this type of new approach to solving out of stocks? Let's go with Eric on that one.
Yeah, I would say a matter of weeks, honestly. So again, this used to be a problem that would take months. I think, because of the abilities of Crisp and Snowflake to bring that data in a super efficient and fast manner, we're able to then layer our technology on to instantly deploy these applications, which turns into, again, immediate ROI, right? So I think in the past, you have months worth of work to generate any ROI from this. I think in the new world, we're looking at weeks, maybe even days in some cases to generate ROI.
Perfect. That's great. And I see Pete nodding as well. So he must have seen that come to fruition, which is great to hear. So, all right. Well, we are just about at 11:30, 11:31. So thanks everybody for joining us today. As a reminder, we will be posting the slides in the CMA and CIMA resource library for all of our members. Any final comments from any of you guys before we close down the webinar today?
I think just thank you to everybody.
Yes, thanks for joining. We'll see everybody in Vegas in a couple weeks. Thank you guys so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.